As some of you know, a few years ago, I had a stroke that can cause my mind to wander if I don't stick to a script. So I hope it's not too distracting if I occasionally refer to my notes. I know it looks like a lot of pages, but they're printed in very large type. I like to call age appropriate. So to begin, back in the 1980s, a man named Robert Fulgham wrote a series of essays that he published in a book called All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Well, I have a confession to make. I never went to kindergarten. That probably explains why I still haven't learned a lot of things I really ought to know. But I have learned a few things in life, and tonight in a school day talk titled Life Lessons Learned from Faculty, Family, and Friends, I'm going to talk about some of the people in this community that I learned things from. Like Lila LeCure, from whom I should have learned to never end a sentence with a preposition, or to never use like in place of such as when I'm giving an example. But anyhow, my first teacher was my grandpa, Ben Falkingham. My folks told me that when I was a baby, Ben would lie down beside me and rattle his keys and then pinch my toe. So the first two words I ever learned beyond mama and dada were key and toe. And then later in elementary school, that made it easy for me to transition to head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And even later in life, the adult version, glasses, wallet, keys, and phone. Besides teaching me how to talk and read, Grandpa Ben also taught me how to count by playing dominoes and cribbage with me for hours. And legend has it that on my first day of school, when the teacher asked if anyone knew how to count, my hand shot up in the air and I confidently shouted, 15, 2, 4, and a pair of 6. So when my sister-in-law Eleanor was going through my brother Mike's stuff after he passed away about 2.5 years ago, she found Grandpa Ben's old cribbage board, and she was kind enough to give it to me, bless her heart. So now I can teach my kids, my 2.5-year-old grandson, to count on the same cribbage board that Grandpa Ben taught me to count 75 years ago. So I mentioned my first grade teacher. Her name was Lillian Korsbreck. So whenever some of my classmates would get a little rowdy, then you know who you are. Mrs. Korsbreck would have us sit cross-legged in a circle and capture our attention with tales about the days her ancestors, led by her great-grandfather, Joseph Renshaw Brown, first came to our little valley, which eventually bore his name. It was Mrs. Korsbreck then who introduced me to the fine art of storytelling and sparked my interest in local history. My second grade teacher was Nita Duffield. And no, I'm not going to tell you about every teacher I ever had, just a couple more who got me started down the path that I've taken in my life. Mrs. Duffield was the first person who ever told me, Jeff, you're going to be a fine writer someday. Someday. If I'd listened to her then, that someday might have come a lot sooner than it eventually did. I thank Mrs. Duffield for planting that seed and for nurturing it as much as she could with many valuable lessons. My third grade teacher, and I promise I'll move on to something else right after this one. My third grade teacher was Anne Swanke, a strict old German taskmaster. Mrs. Swanke impressed upon all of us the discipline required to be a success in life. She also fostered my lifelong love of music. I'll never forget how forcefully yet skillfully she pounded on her old upright piano as she led us in the singing of our state song, Minnesota, Hail to Thee. Hail to Thee, our northern star. She then taught us the meaning behind the words of each verse, furthering my interest in our state's history. So enough for now about teachers. I may talk about a couple more later if I'm not yanked or booed off the stage. Moving on to something else. The first friend I ever remember making was Gary Ingemundson, a future classmate for many years, even before I was old enough to go to kindergarten, which again I did not. My Grandma Hilda, Grandpa Ben's wife, would take me to the old city park just west across the alley from their south side home. And since the Ingemundsons lived on the kitty corner side of that park, right across the alley from Mrs. Swanky, Gary and I naturally crossed paths and soon became fast friends. It's a friendship that's lasted more than 75 years, and which is absolutely amazing given some of the scrapes we got into over the years. I still have scars to prove it, both physically and emotionally. So on the first day of third grade in Mrs. Swanky's class, I made another lifelong friend in Leon Westrock. And if I started telling you about all the things Evil Emil and I have been through together the past 70 years, we'd be here all night laughing until we had tears in our eyes. I am going to recall one episode because it involves many of our high school classmates, who I'm proud to say are celebrating our 60th anniversary of our graduation from Browns Valley High School. So welcome and congratulations to the class of 65. Gary was the class president. Roger Kellstrom, who's no longer with us, was the vice president. Aaron Sikora Reed was the secretary treasurer, and except for Leon, probably the best athlete in our class. Julie Reed Heitman was the homecoming queen. I forget who was the king. Oh, probably Leon, you might guess. So our junior year, 1963-64, our class play was a comedy called Father's Been to Mars. It was about a family whose father played an astronaut on a science fiction television program. Larry Smith played the producer of the show. I'm going to use the maiden names of the young ladies in the cast, who included Shirley Almquist, Barb Anderson, Carolyn Hansen, Janice Miller, Betty Peterson, Sharon Schlow, Franny Saraki, and Joni Smith. I was the father/spaceman. Betty, bless her soul, was my wife. Barb played our live-in cook, maid, and kind of mama bear that ran the house. Shirley, if you can imagine this, played our sassy, saucy, smart-mouthed younger daughter. And Carolyn was our older, hot, blonde teenage daughter. And Leon was her new boyfriend. So in one scene, Betty or Barb, I don't remember which, caught the two teenagers embracing on the couch, about to share their first kiss in the play. I don't know if they ever did that in real life or even rehearsed it or not. But for weeks after the play, at the end of Phi Ed class or open gym or sports practice, a few of us, me and Bill Apple, Jimmy Andrews, and Dick Hoffman, we'd wait in the locker room for Leon to go around the corner into the shower, and then taking turns, one of us would disguise his voice and sing, "Leon and Carolyn sitting in a tree, Kissing." So Leon would come stomping out of the shower, buck naked, mad as a wet hen, like, "Who said that?" And we'd already planned, we'd all point at one of the younger guys, Jerome Apple or Jerry Metz or David Agar. They eventually stopped being funny and we moved on to something else, as teenage boys always do. But it was good for a lot of laughs. And the life lesson there being, you need to, at some point in your life, you need to learn how to take a joke now and then, even if you're the bare butt of it. And that reminds me of two other school topics I want to touch on briefly, sports and girls. I'll talk about sports first. My introduction to organized sports came from Mr. Gay Johnson, who was my Little League baseball coach. And besides being a BBHS football and basketball coach and a home run hitting catcher for the Valley Bombers, Gay was also a neighbor, and his wife, Phyllis, another strict taskmaster, was my first piano teacher. So Mr. and Mrs. Johnson helped me get into two things I was able to enjoy my entire life: sports and music. I know I speak for a lot of people in this room when I say that Gay and Phyllis and their family became beloved lifelong friends of my family and many, many others. And I'm forever grateful for the lessons they taught me, not only about sports and music, but also about giving back and contributing to your community. So I wish Gay was here tonight. I should mention two more faculty members who played a big part in my life. Band director Dean Affelt, who passed away in February, impressed upon me the value that both hard work and teamwork play when you belong to a group such as a band or an orchestra. And these same values were stressed by football coach Sid Vra, a close family friend who passed away much too early. Coach Vra had an even greater impact on my life in his role as an outstanding math teacher. He somehow managed to turn advanced mathematics into a fun and exciting challenge. I have no doubt that it was during Mr. Vra's algebra, geometry, and trigonometry classes that I honed the puzzle-solving skills that sparked my interest in writing mysteries, finally fulfilling Mrs. Duffield's second grade prophecy. So from Grandpa Ben and from faculty members I've mentioned, from classmates like Gary Ingemunson and Leon Westbrock, and upper class friends like Glenn Medbury, Dennis Agar, Gary Lubers, Kenny Rory, Jerry Britsky, Butch Steen, even younger school friends such as Eddie Nettestedt, Keith Haggerty, Don Johnson, the LeClaire boys. I think the three most important life lessons I learned from all of them were: number one, work hard to always be the best that you can be. Number two, take time to be kind to others. And number three, never forget where you came from, which is why we're all here tonight. Before I close by telling you the two most important things my parents taught me, I'm going to take just a minute or two to go back and talk about high school girls, whom I purposely left off the partial list of friends and mentor I just mentioned. Now Leon, being not only a star athlete, but also, let's face it, the best looking boy in the class, Leon always had the confidence to be comfortable around the young ladies. My pal Gary Ingemunson and I, on the other hand, were scared to death of the opposite sex. Still are, we still are. So I was only able to tease Carolyn earlier, because when we were growing up, her parents, Bob and Lois, were such good friends with my parents, Wayne and Marion, that all of the Hanson girls, Dorothy, Carolyn, Ginny, Nancy, Jill, as attractive as they were, still are, were like sisters to me and my siblings, I swear. And even baby brother Mike's wife, Kim, seemed like a sister to me because of my lifelong relationship with her brother, Gary. So I could stand up here and share stories, wild tales that I've heard through the grapevine about the Duffield girls or the Grosnick girls or the Nick girls or the Hoagland girls. But at this point in our lives, neither you nor I would know for sure if these stories were fact or fantasy. So rather than embarrass any other female friends or myself, I'm going to now loop back to where I started and talk just a bit more about family. I think the best advice my father ever gave me came when I was old enough to start looking for a job. Dad said, no matter where you work, whether you like it or not, always treat the equipment, and especially the customers, just like you would if you owned the place, and maybe someday you will. And while I can't say I always followed that advice, it certainly proved to be true for my brother Mike. And I'm sure with his unique storytelling gift of gab, He shared that life lesson with his kids and with his grandkids, including Isaac, who's now running Ben's next door as the 5th generation family business operating from the same spot for almost a century now. And the best advice my mother ever gave me might be this: never say something behind someone's back that you wouldn't say to their face. Again, I can't say I always followed Mom's advice, but I know someone who took that life lesson to heart. My sister Patty is about the kindest soul I've ever known. I don't think I've ever heard her say a bad word about anyone. She's the type of person about whom you can truly claim she wouldn't say poop even if she had a mouthful of it. I'm reminded of one more thing Mom often said late in life that makes more sense to me every day. I'm sure many of you can relate. Growing old, Mom said. It ain't for sissies. And there's one more family member, friend, and mentor I'd like to mention tonight. I don't think she's here, but besides our Grandma Hilda, my favorite babysitter was longtime neighbor Patsy Piaski LeClaire, who's still telling me about things I should and shouldn't do. And finally, for the life of me, I can't leave the podium without saying something about politics. When a certain leader first took office several years ago, people who expressed doubts about his character were told, "Oh, you can't believe everything his critics say about him. Nobody could be that bad." Sadly, some of us are still learning that life lesson. So thank you for coming tonight and for supporting our school and our community. And now you can boo me off the stage. And Leon, let me a beer.